Hello, hello, and welcome to Third Shot Rants with Howard and Gina. I'm Gina. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Gina.
And we're two pickleball friends living in Chicago.
Gina, what are we talking about this episode?
Howard, today's episode is all about the Challenge Court controversy happening at Grant Park in downtown Chicago.
I'm super excited, Gina. We're doing an emergency episode of the pod just for this.
911. Call the authorities. We don't know how to paddle up at Grant Park.
And just so everyone knows, we actually recorded an episode before this one, but we felt there was so much going on that we had to cover this, and we're going to get this out as the second episode of our illustrious podcast.
Howard, tell us a little bit about Grant Park.
Yeah, a little background, especially for people who are not from Chicago. So, Grant Park is a critically important park that's in sort of the heart of Chicago. There is the Loop in Chicago, which is the central business district. It's got the elevated tracks running around in a loop around the central business district, which even if you haven't been to Chicago, you've probably seen in movies and TV shows. Grant Park sits immediately next to the loop, and it sits between the loop and the lakefront, and the lake is another iconic part of the city. So this is kind of the jewel of the Chicago Park District system. So it's not like it's some little park out there in the middle of nowhere. Grant Park it's a big park. It runs along the lakefront. On the northern front, there's Millennium Park, which is a big tourist attraction. There's the bean, the big mirrored sculpture that everyone goes to and takes their picture at. There's a lot of stuff in Grant Park. The Art Institute is in Grant Park. At the southern end of Grant Park, there's the museum campus, which includes the Field Museum of Natural History and the aquarium and the planetarium. So Grant Park is just kind of very central to the city. And historically, it's often described as the front yard of Chicago. So this is a really big deal. And all kinds of events take place in Grant Park. There's Lollapalooza, which kind of takes over the park, or a big part of the park, for a few days every summer. And that, Gene, is a little bit how the pickle courts came to be, right? Lollapalooza.
Exactly. So pre-2023, tensions were rising between tennis players and pickleball players, as they do. People wanting their court time. A committee was formed to advocate and fundraise for pickleball courts, with the help of a $500,000 grant from Lollapalooza. The Grant Park pickleball courts, which there's 16 dedicated courts, that's amazing, were built in September 2023. Block Club Chicago, which is a hyper-local news source, has a really good write-up on it if anyone wants to dig into the history of those courts.
Yeah, we'll stick a link in the show notes to that article, and people can read all about it. Mm-hmm. So I went for the first time to Grant Park in the fall of 2023. I think maybe a month or two after it had opened, and I went with my friend Susie, who's kind of a recurring character on the podcast. So she's, as I mentioned last time, she's someone I play with a ton. So we went down, and I will say it was very disorganized. So there was supposed to be levels for the different courts that was already supposed to be in place by then, but I don't think anyone was actually following the levels, and it was a little chaotic in terms of figuring out how you could play. So if you show up to the park and you're just trying to follow whatever the rules are supposed to be or whatever the system is supposed to be, and it wasn't clear what was going on because people were all over the place. I would say at the time we went on, I think it was maybe a Friday night a couple of times just because of schedules, and it wasn't super busy, so there weren't people waiting, and you kind of had to go around and look for people to play, and it worked out, and we had some fun, we played some good games there, but it felt like it was chaotic, and it was never really clear how the system was supposed to work. Have you been to Grant Park before sort of the recent controversy, Gina?
I had only been there one time. It was actually earlier this spring. I obviously would not have gone last year. Anxiety way too high to be like inserting myself into games. It was not really on my radar of like a place that I should go. So this spring I went, had lunch with an old coworker, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna bring my paddle. I'm gonna see what Grant Park is all about. I'm ready for it. I'm feeling good. This is a Wednesday at like 3 p.m. So I show up and there's not really much going on, which is fine. I played with a brand new beginner. It was his first day playing. He had a little bit of racket sport background, and he did great. We had to go kind of like shopping around looking for anyone that would play against us. It was
Yeah.
maybe like 3 or 4 courts of just twosomes drilling, and that's probably a good time to do that if you looking to drill. So it was okay. A lackluster experience for me because I went in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day.
Yeah, yeah. So I hadn't been back to Grant Park since the fall of 2023. In part because it's a little ways away from, we both live around the kind of the northwest side of the city, so it's a bit of a hike to get into the city, and you've got to figure out parking. But also because Grant Park had a reputation as being a difficult place to play. It was a little chaotic and kind of hard to figure out what you were supposed to do, even if you showed up trying to follow whatever the rules were supposed to be. And the system, I'll sort of use the word system, but it was not an official system in any sense. But the way play worked, I don't know when it started exactly, but certainly I think it was very established by this summer, and maybe it's been going on for, I don't know, maybe the whole time since the opening. But essentially, at times when it was busy, when there were people waiting to get on the court, every single one of the 16 courts was a challenge court. So a challenge court, for, I think most people probably know, but if you don't, on a challenge court, you play a game, you play doubles, and the winners of that game, they get to stay on the court. They stay together. They don't split. And then they take on the two people come on as a team and play the winners of the prior game. And then there's a game between those two teams, and the winners of that game or match, they get to stay on again. And unless there are limits, if you're on a challenge court and you win, you can just stay on indefinitely. And that is the way, as I understand it, at times when Grant Park was busy, that's the way every single court operated. So everyone would wait and go on as twosomes and challenge the people that had won the previous match on that court. And that's the way the system was. And then Gina, kind of pretty recently in the last couple of weeks, there were some changes, right?
Yeah. So at the end of July, it was announced that Grant Park would be moving away from this all 16 court as challenge court system. The system that is being inserted is we have 4 challenge courts remaining, so that's 25%. As you said, that's a 2-on, 2-off system, so it's a little bit slower wait times for those courts, 4 of those. And then we have 12 courts that are 4 on and 4 off, and that is 4 advanced courts, 4 intermediate courts, and 4 beginner courts. And so this is what is causing all the ruckus around what's been going on, whether or not this system is serving the people of Grant Park or not.
Yeah. So this is when we released the first episode of our podcast. A lot of people said, "Hey, you're going to talk about Grant Park," because that's what a lot of people in Chicago are talking about. And a lot of our understanding of a lot of this comes from the Grant Park team reach, because neither of us play at Grant Park regularly, and we don't know a lot of the people who are there, but there's a very, very active discussion on team reach. And a little bit of context for people if they don't know, team reach is a messaging, is a communications app that is, at least in Chicago, it's really kind of the default way that people set up groups to talk about and organize play at different venues. And some of the Team Reach groups are, fully open, public, and they're huge. I think Grant Park Team Reach has over 2,000 members. The Horner Park Team Reach group has, I think, over 3,000 members. And so there's a lot of people on there, and it's an app on which you can post your views. You can also DM people, but there's a lot of public discussion of what's going on at each of those venues. Team Reach, just so people know, it's used in Chicago. I'm not sure it's the default app everywhere. I think there are other apps that people use in other places, and maybe we'll do a survey of that at some point. But you can use it to set up smaller groups as well. So instead of these 1,000+ member groups, you can form your own private little group with as few people as you want, 5, 10, 20 people, and that's what people use in Chicago for the most part to kind of set up these groups. And Gina, so I've been kicked out recently of a small Team Reach group for non-attendance.
Howard, non-attendance.
Non-attendance. And you are still there because it's a small group of a lot of our friends, and it is completely fair that they kicked me out because I didn't show up for well over a year.
Listen, these people are lovely people to play with, and they grill up for the holidays. So I'm gonna go where the hot dogs are.
Right. So you showed up for a picnic on a recent holiday, and
I'm safe.
That's maybe how you got to stay in, or maybe you're just a more lovely person than I am.
It's debatable.
But I miss it, not because I haven't shown up for a year, but you and I like to gossip about what's going on. So we would, and this Team Reach is full of people who are our friends. So we would keep an eye on it and see how groups form, and it's interesting who's posting the initial invite and who responds to that, and then are you forming a group that's a strict multiple of 4, so you've got a full court all the time, or people willing to have odd numbers and rotate? And it's kind of a little picture into the sociology of pickleball in Chicago. So I kind of miss that group. But they said they're lovely people. They said they let me back in, and I probably would have asked to go back in sooner, except I wanted to be able to talk about it on the pod.
I'm assuming that this podcast shout out or call out is enough to get you back in.
They're lovely people. They said I could come back, and I didn't ask yet because I wanted to be able to talk about it. But anyway, so Team Reach is just kind of prevalent in our lives, and I don't know. It's probably if I look at my most recently used apps on my phone, it's way up there in terms of the apps. And Team Reach is I think the way all of this Grant Park controversy has been discussed. So what's been going on with the Grant Park Team Reach, Gina?
Yeah, so on July 31st, a member of the Grant Park Team Reach had announced that the system would be moving away from all challenge courts, and that they would be dividing the courts into 4 different sections, as I mentioned earlier. From there, the chats have essentially imploded. There's just so much chatter every day. There's probably 20 to 30 comments happening every day, at least, of people taking both either side, stating their case, going in under anonymous names. It's a little hard to follow. I've tried to keep up, and it's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot. So there's one thread that's at least, I think it's 150 posts long in terms of people going back and forth on being pro-challenge court versus anti-challenge court. And then the same issues kind of anyone can post a new thread, and then people go back at it again over and over again on the same issues, and it gets pretty heated. I don't really see an end in sight for this either. It still seems to be as hot as it was 2 weeks ago, the conversation. Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna try to set out what I think is the view of the pro challenge court people. I don't necessarily agree with all or most of it, but I'll try to sort of explain what their view was. And it recalls, so before the most recent set of changes, the challenge court system had been put in place by the players who were playing there. It wasn't the official rules. The official rules that were posted before the most recent system that Gina just described a little while ago, the rules that had always been posted were during times when it was busy, all courts were supposed to be 4 on, 4 off. And that's at least in my somewhat limited experience, that's really, really common in public courts, certainly around the Chicago area and in a couple of other areas I've traveled to. And that makes sense as a system because it's kind of most straightforward, and it gets the most people onto the courts and limits wait times. But in Grant Park, and I think this is somewhat unusual, all of the courts have become challenge courts during times when things were busy. And the pro challenge court people kind of defend this as, well, this is the system that the people who actually play at Grant Park wanted. So everyone who shows up, they're happy with the system. It works well because, the argument goes, it works well because you can show up and you can look at the different courts. You can see what the levels of the players are on the different courts, and you can kind of, and there might be a diversity of challenge court levels, and you can try to figure out, oh, this would be a good group, and I could get a good match on this court versus some other court where it doesn't seem, it might be too high, it might be too low for you. And the argument goes that this is a court that allows really competitive play, and it's kind of unique in the city. And why wouldn't we allow this kind of competitive play? Because after all, we're playing pickleball. It's recreation, but it's also a competitive sport, and there are lots of advanced players in the city who want to challenge themselves. And this is the system that the players who've used Grant Park have chosen and are happy with. And why not allow this in Grant Park, and you can have other systems in other places? What do you think of that, Gina?
Howard, that's a good question. I mean, having 16 challenge courts to me is a bit absurd. It excludes a whole lot of people. I don't know that we need to cater to the highest level of players. We have private clubs now. There's other courts in Chicago too. To take the heart of Chicago courts at Grant Park and make all 16 challenge courts doesn't make it a very welcoming place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for me to conceive of the argument that every single court should be a challenge court, because when you think about what it precludes, so if you're beginners and you're just trying to learn the game, right? If you're not prepared to go on to challenge courts of any level and compete. You're just trying to get used to the game and hit the ball a bit and get used to things. And there's no way an all challenge court system works for beginners. And if you're a family and you want to bring your kids out and you want to kind of get some exercise and hit the ball around, that you can't, under the challenge court system. So you go on as teams of 2, so you can't go on as a foursome. So you show up as a family, you got a couple of kids, you got some friends. You can't go on as a foursome, and you have to go on as a team of 2 to challenge for a court. And that just takes out the ability to use the courts for just big sections of the potential pickleball playing public, I think.
Yeah, it's sad to think about how many people are not able to enter the sport because those courts have become so competitive.
Yeah. And I think even for people who are more experienced, who don't don't necessarily want to play challenge courts, then you can't do that. You can't go there as a group of friends, a group of foursome, and go play some games, wait your turn in line, and play a game. You've got to split up, and you got to play 2x2, and that won't really work for you. So challenge courts, in general, I think are fine. Gina, you and I have both played different challenge court venues, and it's totally fun, right? You play challenge courts. You got a good partner. You win a bunch of games. It feels fantastic, right? You have a great night.
Yeah, so we do challenge court Sunday night at Piccadilly, and me and my guy Tada, we were running the courts all night, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do I have the energy for it all the time? No, not really, but it was a lot of fun. So I get it.
Right.
There's a time and place.
Right. As a system, having every single court be a challenge court, that I don't see any argument for that. I will say, from what I've read of the Team Reach comments, I think that the challenge court people have kind of backed off of that as the proposed system, because it's virtually indefensible, I think, because it just absolutely excludes so many other people who have a right. These are public courts in the heart of Chicago, and I think the challenge court people, they won't quite say it, but there's a little bit of a sense of, well, I'm a better player. If it's a competitive sport, and if I can win the court, I should get to stay on the court. It's not really how public parks work. They're kind of for everyone. And you and I were decent players. We're probably above average in terms of people who would show up to an open play situation, but we're not entitled to more time on the court just because we might be a little better than other people. Everyone should have a fair shot at time on the courts.
Yeah, so letting better players make the rules is a very slippery slope. And you mentioned yesterday when we were discussing this that whole viewpoint is excluding the fact that so many people are not going to Grant Park because they don't feel welcome there. And so the people that are left are primarily, maybe it skews a little bit higher level because of that.
Right. So I think one argument that the challenge court people make is, well, everyone who goes to Grant Park is happy with this, but that's the result of the system being put in place by probably the more advanced players over time, so that everything becomes a challenge court. Well, guess what? The people who are beginners and the families with kids and the people that might want to play as a foursome, they're not coming there because you've made the court unwelcoming to those groups of people. I will say, I think on the Team Reach comments, the challenge court proponents have backed off. I think they realize they can't really argue that every court should be a challenge court, because that, for the reasons we've discussed, that really just doesn't fly. And now as I understand their position, it's more that, well, we need more than 4 challenge courts.
They need to be happy with what they're getting, I think.
Yeah.
So in this situation, they're getting 4 challenge courts, which by default are advanced, right? And then they get 4 advanced courts that are 4 on, 4 off. So they get 50% of the courts, which is a very generous offer. It's baffling to me that there's still an argument going on over this, that we're not letting people into the sport. Someone might be a beginner today, and they might be a 4.5 in 2 years. Like, we have to let people into this sport for any reason. It's like you said, it's a public resource. These courts don't belong to anyone; they belong to all of us.
Yeah. So just offhand, that split seems really pretty fair to the advanced players to go, 4 challenge, 4 advanced. So that's half of the 16 courts, and then 4 beginners and 4 intermediate courts. And we made a little field trip, Gina, a couple of days ago, and we'll get into that. But I will say, from our field trip, it wasn't obvious that the challenge courts that were there were busier, or the lines were longer than the non-challenge courts, than the 4 on, 4 off courts. So I would say you let the system work for a while and see how things things look before you move most of the courts back to challenge courts again. And the other thing I'll say, as we've been talking about, is because you've had this all challenge court system for a long time, the players who go to Grant Park, they're the people who like that system. So you can say, well, everyone who goes there wants to play challenge courts. Well, that's because you created a challenge court system, and of course that's going to attract the people that want to play that system. And give a little time to see who might use the courts. These are public courts in the middle of the city, and see who shows up. And if in maybe you run that the rest of this year while we can play outside and see how things go. And if there clearly is, after everyone's had a chance to play there, if there really is a huge demand to have challenge courts, then maybe you could consider changing the mix a little bit. I think that's not a reasonable thing to think about in the future. But I think it's premature to say, oh, we love challenge courts. Everyone there loves challenge courts, and therefore we gotta move more of the courts back to that.
Yeah, Grant Park needs to heal a little bit. We need to let the people back in. I was a little bit on the fence about whether this was even the right time to introduce this, as we're recording on August 22nd. We've got 2 months of playtime left, I'd say, in Chicago. Did that make sense? But, I agree with you, Howard, that if we're going to do a change, just don't wait. Just put it in and get the people used to it. And let's start off next year with this new system. And hopefully the chatter settles.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. We've got a couple of months to kind of test out the system and see how the numbers look and see how things shake out. I think the other thing I'd say is, for the pro challenge court people, you have to be willing to live with lines that take longer to get onto the challenge courts, because you're using the courts in a less efficient way in terms of processing the line. So, just to give a simple example, if you just had 2 courts and you made one court a challenge court and the other court was a 4-on, 4-off court, and you had, let's say, 8 people that wanted to play on the challenge and 8 people that wanted to play on the 4-on, 4-off standard court. Well, at any given time on the challenge court, you'd have 4 people on and 4 people waiting. And because you're only letting 2 people on at a time, the people at the back of that challenge court line, they've got to wait 2 games, which might be 30 minutes, to get on the court. And on the other court, the standard court, you've got 4 people on the court and 4 people waiting. They're just waiting 1 game, which might be 15 minutes to get on the court. So if you want to play challenge courts, you've got to live with the fact that you've chosen a system that is just less efficient in terms of processing the line of people that want to come on. And if that's a system that you love, then sure, that I'm not saying there can't be challenge courts, and the current system in fact has challenge courts, but you've got to be willing to accept kind of the relative inefficiency of the challenge court system. Now, if you play challenge courts and you get on and then you win, then your wait time for that second game is nothing, and that's why it could balance out for you. But you can't complain that your line of 4 people, because it's going to take 2 games to get on, that you somehow deserve more courts. Mm-hmm. Because in that simple example, you've got 8 people that want to play challenge and 8 people that want to play standard. The sensible thing would be, the fair thing would be to split the courts and do 1 challenge and 1 standard. But that, in that example, that challenge court line is going to take longer. It's going to be 30 minutes from the back of that line versus 15 minutes from the standard court line.
Howard, you make good points. It's not efficient. I think the offer that was on the table quite favors the advanced players, right? I'm surprised that there's so much backlash about it. So,
right. So it could have gone back entirely to the actual rules that were posted were just 4-on, 4-off for every single court. That was the rule. Mm-hmm. And so anyone who wants to protest protest not having challenge courts has to deal with the fact that those were the actual park district rules at the time. And the other thing I would say about people who are pro challenge courts is, they let the system of all challenge courts, every single court is a challenge court. They let the system develop, which, as we've discussed, it's just very hostile to all kinds of groups of people. And to now say, oh, we're now going to just ask for some challenge courts, but we want more challenge courts. You have to reckon with the fact that you made Grant Park, you made the pickleball courts there pretty unfriendly to large groups of people for a long time. And let's see how things shake out. And I think I'm fine if it seems like everyone has a chance to go there and play there under this new system, then yeah, maybe you could think, and there's still a big demand for challenge courts, recognizing the relative inefficiency of challenge courts in terms of getting through a line of people, then sure, we could think about shifting the balance a little bit. But it's premature when we've only had the new system just, I think, a couple of weeks or so, Gina,
Mm-hmm.
to then say, oh no, this isn't good because the people that like to play at Grant Park, we all want challenge courts. But that's something that was kind of created by the people there putting in an all challenge court system for a long time and not being friendly to other groups.
Absolutely, Howard. Yeah, I'm gonna be pretty interested to see like how the team reach looks in a week from now, in a month from now. But you're right, this needs time to be implemented. We need to maybe put our egos aside and realize that being a 4.5 or 5.0 player doesn't mean we are entitled to more court time. This is a public space. It's for everyone. Share the courts.
Yeah, share the courts. Okay, so we took a little field trip.
Oh my God, Howard.
How was that?
It was the best night of my life. Okay, imagine me. It's 4 p.m. Howard picks me up at my front door. We ride downtown. Henry, our audio engineer, is with us. We get over to, we go to the courts. We have our fun there. And then we go for dim sum. And then Howard drops me off at the front door. Both of my cats are in the window, just like greeting them. It was just perfect night from start to finish. But let's get into Grant Park visit.
Yeah, it was a good night, Gina. Yeah, so we showed up at the beginning, and I think all the courts were being used. It wasn't super crowded, but every court was in use in some form or other. And we were there with my son Henry. He's a solid but beginning pickleball player. And three of us were there, and there were two or three other people kind of meandering around. And it wasn't quite clear what to do. People were not rotating off. There were at least one group, maybe two groups playing singles, and there were some people drilling. And we talked to the two or three other people who were standing around, and no one could quite figure out how to go on because there were doubles games being played and doubles games ending, but no one was coming off the court.
Yeah, so we met a super nice guy. He just moved to Chicago from DC. Yeah, I think our first question was, how does this work? What are we doing? And he also was unaware of how we get on court. I mean, I guess the expectation is that you have to go walk onto the courts and like stand next to a court if you want to play there, is what was happening.
Yeah. And at some point and so the thing that, our perception was that people were kind of playing challenge courts in some form or other when we showed up. Mm-hmm. And we did come upon a couple of people who were just drilling. And initially we asked if we could play, and they said, no, we kind of like to keep drilling by ourselves.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And there was a little social pressure, not just from us, but from some other people around who said, you can't really do that when when the courts are full and there are people waiting. And eventually we did play them, but again, but people were not rotating off as groups of 4 at that time, and think of the experience that gives to people who are not looking to play challenge courts. So we showed up. You and I, Gina, we could go play a challenge court somewhere. My son Henry, he's a little less experienced, but we could easily have any of the 2 people that we talked to at the beginning. They were super nice people. We could have gotten into a foursome with them, played a fun game, had a good time. But we couldn't. And I think that's, if someone had come off as a foursome, I would have asked one of those 2 people, "Hey, would you like to play with us?" And I'm pretty sure they would have said yes. But we couldn't do that because no one was coming off. So it's just not a welcoming environment.
Could you imagine too being a beginner or maybe someone from out of town and walking up to those 2 people, asking them for a game, and then them saying, "No, we're drilling," and you kind of like walk away with your tail between your legs, like. But I mean, obviously, we went there with a mission of like, "No, we're getting on court, thank you." Like we know the rules, kind of. But not everyone has that, and yeah, I really didn't like. That was not a good like first experience to have that night. We're there Tuesday night, 5:30 p.m. It's starting to fill up. Yeah.
And then there was a singles court, right? At the time when people started to paddle up, and a few of the courts started to follow the 4-on, 4-off system. So some people started coming off. People were using the paddle racks at that point. So there's a set of, I think there's 3 separate paddle racks for the beginner, intermediate, and advanced courts there. And there was some pressure from the people waiting on the people playing on the courts, and people did start to come off. But there was a court playing singles, and you and I went over, partly because we were doing a little investigative journalism for the pod. Otherwise, would you otherwise kind of go over and interrupt a singles group? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you just let them be. But we were trying to gather some information, so we went over, and what happened?
Yeah, so these are on the beginner courts. Let's start there. We've got 2 advanced players playing singles. That's going on for about 20 minutes, and then they swap out with 2 more singles players. That's when I walk over and let them know, hey, we've got, I think, about 10 to 12 paddles up for the beginner courts at this point. So yeah, you can't play singles right now. Like, it's just not an option. And they said, well, we waited. And I wasn't like quite prepared for that. Oh, well, I guess it's your court then.
Well, you waited. Of course you waited.
Everyone's waiting. Like, you don't get to play singles. That's
you don't
it.
get to play singles under the old rules.
Yeah.
You don't get to play singles under the new rules. You don't even get to play singles under the challenge court system.
Yeah.
You should be playing a challenge court system. So that there really was some kind of selfish behavior there, I thought.
I was not pleased. And I mean, they said they'd be done in 10 minutes, and at least 25 minutes later, they're still playing. And, I was looking at my watch and watching them. And, because they were, on my nerves a little bit. So I didn't like that weren't.
It doesn't even matter how long. You're not supposed to be on there. You should be off. And it doesn't matter if you waited, because that's not the system and any of the systems, but you're still insisting on playing your singles game.
So this is 6 p.m. now on Tuesday night. So people have left work. People are shuffling in to Grant Park. It's getting busier and busier. Yeah, the singles was very inappropriate, but the sense of entitlement was loud and clear. Yeah.
So, that's going on at Grant Park too. I would say toward the end, I forget, it was maybe 6:15, 6:30 toward the end of when we were there. It did seem like the substantial, maybe all of the 4-on, 4-off courts, they had moved to 4-on, 4-off, and people were using the paddle racks outside, and that for the most part worked well. And there were the 4 challenge courts that were just operating as challenge courts. Again, fine. On the new system, that's also legitimate. And I will say I think I've said this earlier, but it didn't seem like the challenge courts were especially crowded in terms of lines either. There was maybe one pair of paddles down at each court, maybe not even. So it didn't seem like there was a massive demand at that time, and maybe it's different later in the evening. So I don't know, but that's what we saw around 6:30. But Gina, there was one court that was a little difficult.
One intermediate court was not doing 4 on, 4 off. They had 4 on, and then they had, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 6 people just sitting next to the court. And they were all rotating like amongst themselves, not with the paddle system. And at this point, there's at least 3 courts waiting, like 12 people, would
Yeah,
you say,
yeah.
waiting for an intermediate court. We see a lady who's been waiting go out there and let them know, hey, we're paddling up. What did those guys say? They were really rude, but
So the people who were on the outside of the fence, they kept saying, that's not fair.
yeah,
That's
you
not,
guys are being selfish.
yeah. And the people on the court just had a lot of attitude, and I think they said something sarcastic.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, bro.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry, bro. Yeah, I'm a jerk. I did not like them. I was proud of people for standing up for themselves, though. But again, that was
And
hostile. That was not a good experience to have to like be, I don't know, amongst. You just want everyone to follow the rules, make it simple, make it so that anyone who's from anywhere around the world can come to Grant Park and understand how this works and not have some special club who doesn't rotate with everyone else on this one intermediate court. But yeah, that seems to be a big ask.
yeah, and I've been the newcomer or sort of the new person at other courts in the suburbs or some other areas, and there are a lot of just very well organized systems. You show up, there's a paddle rack, it's very clear what you're supposed to do, and people when they know there's a system, it's easy for them to help you. You show up and you say, hey, what's going on? They just say, well, there's a paddle rack, it's 4 on, 4 off. It's super clear what you're supposed to do. Here, especially at the beginning when we were there, Gina, we had read extensively about the discussion, the new rules, so we understood everything we could have understood showing up at the beginning at Grant Park, but we didn't know what was going on because no one was following any kind of system.
Mm-mm. It was definitely a free for all. Do you think that this is a situation where the park district maybe needs to insert someone there on weekday nights or weekend mornings and get people all on the same page, or like what? I don't know. What's the resolution if we have one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would really help because it would be someone official that people would be less inclined to push back against. If a park district person went on and talked to those people who were kind of trying to play either challenge court or private court on that court toward the end, then maybe the resolution would have been a little
Hmm.
different. I don't know if the park district is really going to do that though, but that would really help, I think.
Yeah, like so, what happens I mean, I would assume every park that has pickleball is you have these mayors that are more or less, elected, self-appointed. They just sort of rise to the occasion of being someone who is maybe somewhat involved in organizing or welcoming new players. And, right now at Grant Park, there just seems to be like 2 very competing groups here that, yeah, I'm not sure that they're seeing eye to eye yet. Not sure that they will, but it's hard when you've got
Yeah.
2 very like different points of view being presented.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. So I would say the encouraging thing, Gina, is that toward the end, when it got busier, it did seem like for the most part, people were using the paddle racks, following the system. So if you showed up as a newbie there, you'd be able to see what was going
Hmm.
on, and it was kind of working with a couple of exceptions here and
Hmm.
there. So it wasn't complete chaos. It was a little difficult when we first showed up, and it wasn't clear what we were supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, so paddle system, easy to follow. Making up your own rules, a little bit harder for everyone.
Okay, Gina, the last point on the outline of Grant Park discussion in our notes says anyone who wants to fight us can come on the pod.
Do we want to invite people? I don't know. It's been a weird week, Howard.
I don't know if we're gonna do that, but maybe we will. But I think what we'll definitely do is if you have comments or you have responses to us, we'll play a bunch of them. If you want to email us, or ideally if you can send us a voice clip, we'll play it on the
Mhm.
air. Email us at thirdshotrants@gmail.com. Third is spelled out THIRD. Shots. Thirdshotrants@gmail.com. And we'll try to if you want to be pro challenge court, or you think there should be no challenge courts, then let us know, and we'll do some follow up on this.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see
And
what people have to say.
and it's we're not committing to this, but it's not impossible we could have a guest interview on the pod.
It's happening. There's people on the team reach. I'm like, I need you.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's about it for Grant Park. We, as I said, it's such a hot topic in Chicago that we felt we wanted to cover it right away while it was happening. I think it's also instructive for people in other parts of the country. It's kind of a little microcosm of how you deal with pickleball courts as a scarce resource, and different kind of groups of people that want different things from the court, and what happens. So it's very interesting from that perspective to me.
Where there's pickleball, there will be drama, Howard.
Yeah, that's why we're
we
here,
figured
Gina.
that out.
The other reason we're here, Gina, is one of my goals in the pod is to tell people to hire you as a coach, because you are the
Thanks,
best.
Howard. You're very sweet.
And my pitch this week, which I really believe is, I think a lot of players I know, including skilled, experienced players, they don't necessarily have a real forehand drive. I think that's an important shot that if you're really trying to kind of get to a next level, if you don't have a solid forehand drive, that's kind of a key shot that you should be able to hit. And Gina, you didn't ask me to say this, but I feel like you have one of the most, you're a very fundamentally sound, very technically sound player, certainly among the people I'm fortunate enough to play with. But you're just really good at that, and especially your forehand drive, I think is kind of close to textbook. So I think you're the right person to teach that.
Thank you, Howard. Definitely my favorite shot in pickleball. When I see a short, kind of juicy return, oh my God, am I going to eat that up with a drive? Probably down the middle.
Yeah.
Just smoke it by both of them. Favorite shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And the people who are very, very good pickleball players, who on a short ball can't really take advantage of that because they don't have that shot. So, if on a short ball, they may be able to hit an easier drop to get in, or hit something else, but a short ball like that really kind of should be punished.
Oh yeah. It's a fun one to teach too, because you get to see like the aha moment and people learning the shot, and some smiles when they see that nice low hard drive going right at their opponent. So I love teaching the drive.
Yeah. So people should email you at gtpicklecoach@gmail.com. It's going to be in the show notes for this episode, so it should be in your podcast app. You can see notes for this episode, and we'll put in email addresses and links that we think are relevant, that you might be interested in looking
Thank you,
at.
Howard.
So that's there. Hi, Gina. I am, as I said before, I'm a Carbon Paddle ambassador. I have a discount code, which is Carbon10, CRBNTEN. That's going to be in the show notes as well. And you should email us. You should tell us what you think, especially if you're pro challenge courts. Defend them, and we will feature some of that content. And again, that's at thirdshotrants@gmail.com.
Okay.
I will also say, Gina, I don't know if you even know this, but I think we might have a real Japanese listener from Japan.
No.
Did you know that? Okay, I'm not 100% sure because I have a friend who happens to be in Japan. I know he listened to an episode from here, but there are enough downloads from there, and we have a couple of follows on Instagram, which is also going to be on the show notes.
That's amazing.
So we have a couple of followers from some Japanese accounts on Instagram. So if you're a listener and you're from Japan and you want to tell us something about the pickle scene in Japan, send us an email or send us an audio clip, and we would love to play
That's
it.
amazing.
And if you want to come on the pod and talk with us, we'll figure out the time difference and we'll have you on. We'd love to get a perspective from a different
Howard,
country.
what a fun surprise. You know I'm not looking at the analytics.
As always, please give us a good rating. Only give us a good rating. Don't give us a bad rating. But please rate us. Write a review if you'd like. We've had a couple of reviews, which we really appreciate. But more reviews would be great. And follow us, please. So just follow us, and you'll get each episode as it comes in. I would say at the moment, so this episode's coming out probably about a week after the first one. And early on, we might be trying to just add a little content and do things a little more frequently. I think we're aiming for Gina something more like kind of every 2-week schedule when we're a little more settled down.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe we'll see what this first 4 to 8 weeks looks like, and by then we're kind of getting into holiday season. And
yeah, I think we might try to put out a few episodes a little more quickly. This, as I said, is an emergency episode of the pod, and that's why it's out so quickly. But that's our kind of expected publication schedule.
And I just wanted to say thanks for all the positive feedback. I got a lot of nice texts this week. It's just a beautiful reminder of how many amazing people I've met playing pickleball. This is a lot of fun. I love spending time with you, Howard.
Everyone loves your voice, Gina. So we've gotten so many comments on how it sounds great, and especially Gina's voice sounds great. No one has said my voice sounds great, which I've
never heard this feedback before in my life. So I'm struggling to be accepting of it. My natural inclination is what? My voice? Okay. Yeah,
it's real.
I'm really grateful.
It's grassroots. People are clamoring for more of your voice. It's excellent. Okay, and we don't have much of an audience yet, but it's building. So if people ever want to advertise with us, or pickle companies want to send us stuff to review, we would love to do it.
Do it. Thanks,
right,
Howard.
Gina.
See you real soon.